Time now for Michigan's #1 outdoor radio show, Mike Avery's Outdoor Magazine. Mike Avery has covered the outdoors in Michigan for more than 4 decades, and that tradition continues today. Outdoor Magazine is brought to you by Jay's Sporting Goods, the Eider Insurance Group, Angler Quest Pontoons, the Forward Corporation, Primal Outdoors, Security Credit Union, Offshore Tackle, Garber Chevrolet, Rapid River Knife Works, and by Michigan Brand Meats. Now, here's Mike Avery.
Well, thank you, Ken Hunter, for that introduction, and welcome to another edition of the Outdoor Magazine radio show right here on the Outdoor Magazine radio network on more than 30 radio stations across the great state of Michigan. How are you? What a wonderful time of year this is. What a big weekend this is in Michigan. For many people, at least. It's the opening weekend of trout season here statewide, and the reopener of the walleye season on inland lakes and rivers in the lower peninsula. Turkey season is now in full swing. Bear applications are out next week. Looking at the forecast, it appears by the time you hear the show this weekend, the weather has changed because it's been cold. Unseasonably cold. Did you get your bird yet? Did you get out turkey hunting yet? Are you finding any morels? How is the steelhead fishing? See, how is the walleye fishing? There's no end to things right now. It's a great time of year. It's a wonderful time of year. And I've had a pretty good week since we last talked. The opener of Michigan's turkey season for me was cold. I mean, it felt like deer hunting in November. And it snowed. And it snowed for much of the morning, and it snowed sideways. I was set up at my buddy Doug's farm. Thank you, Doug. In that Wraith 270 see-through ground blind with my crossbow. I had a couple decoys in front of me. I was cautiously optimistic because every time you go hunting, you have to be optimistic. You have to say, okay, this could be the best hunt of my life, or I could harvest something, or at least I'm going to have a wonderful time. You have to be. Otherwise, there's no sense in doing it. There's no sense in heading out in the woods or in the field or on the water if you're not going to have a good time. If you don't enjoy it, then do something else. Play pickleball, play golf, work in your yard. But I love turkey hunting. You know that. I hadn't seen any birds on that property for a few days, so I was a little nervous, right? But I thought I'm going to give it my best shot, and I did. I sat out there opening morning till, I think, 11:30 in the morning, until I got just so cold I couldn't take it anymore, right? Never saw a bird, never saw a hen, never saw a jake, never saw a longbeard, never heard a gobble. The gobbling, I wasn't surprised. It was such a nasty day, I didn't expect they were going to be very vocal. So I thought, okay, I think I'm going to make a move. So I called another friend of mine, Scott. See, I don't have any property. I'm not blessed to own hunting property, but I am blessed to have some very good friends who are very generous in offering me access to their beautiful pieces of heaven. And Scott said, yeah, come on over. He said, come on over and do an afternoon hunt. So I did. He already had a Wraith set up over a food plot in the back of his property. So I set up in that Wraith, and I put one feeder hen decoy out in front of me in the middle of the food plot. She was 20 yards away from me. I got settled in there, let the woods settle back down, made a few soft yelps. Nothing much, not overly aggressive, just a few soft yelps. No response. That's okay, no big deal. I've done my part. I let any birds in the area know that I'm here. About, half hour, 40 minutes later, I see a longbeard sneaking into the food plot from my left. He didn't gobble, he didn't strut, but he's looking at my decoy. I thought, here we go. He came in to the food plot. He didn't go to the decoy. What he did was he decided to walk to my blind. He walked close enough to the front of the blind that I could have almost reached out and grabbed him by the tail feathers or by the beard. He was so close that I couldn't even get a shot. But it was pretty cool to see him up that close. He wandered back off to the west. I thought, well, that was a pretty fun encounter. Maybe I'll see another one. I waited a few minutes, gave another couple of soft yelps, and just sat back and thought, okay, it's a beautiful afternoon now because I'm nice and warm in this blind out of the wind. I'm comfortable. I've got a decoy in front of me, and I'm turkey hunting. All is wonderful with the world. I'll sit back and see what happens. Well, that same bird came back from the west again. He did not come into the decoy. Again, he did not gobble. He did not strut. He was interested, but not overly interested. But this time he didn't come to the blind. He didn't come to the decoy. He decided to keep an eye on that decoy, and he just walked the edge of the food plot where the food plot met the woods, and that was about 30 yards away. So now I've got a situation. Am I going to get a shot? Is he going to come in? Is he going to strut? Is he going to hold up? What's going to happen here? So I put I got a crossbow. I put the scope, the crosshairs on the bird, and I'm following the bird along the edge of the food plot. I thought, I am not going to shoot him when he's walking. It's a 30-yard shot, which is going to about the farthest I want to make a shot, even with a crossbow. So I'm panning along with him, and then he stops. And when he stopped, I just happened to have the crosshairs perfectly centered on him. I pulled the trigger, and I let the arrow go. And from my perspective where I was sitting, I didn't have a lighted knock, but it looked like it was a pretty darn good shot. I thought, I don't think I could have made a better shot. He runs off, flapping into the woods. I think, okay, I think I got my bird. I think I got my bird opening day. I give it just a couple of minutes, get out of the blind. I go over to where I hit him. There's feathers. There's no blood. There's feathers, but I know the direction that he's gone. So I start to wander down that trail, and there, 65 yards from where I shot him, he's all piled up. A big, beautiful springtime Michigan longbeard. Never got him to gobble, never got him to strut, but I got my bird opening day. Big bird, very nice bird. Got some beautiful pictures of him. It was a wonderful hunt, an outstanding hunt. But I keep comparing it back to my hunt from last year. Last year, I had to hunt hard for 2.5 weeks before I got a bird. Last year, I had several close encounters with gobbling birds and strutting birds, and I missed a bird opening morning. I eventually got my bird, but I had to work harder for it. Which hunt was more enjoyable? Which hunt was more rewarding? Both experiences had the same outcome. I got my bird. So they were both, in that sense, a success. Both hunts were a success because I got out and I had the experience of hunting turkeys in the springtime. But I can't help but think that I actually, because I love to hunt turkeys so much, that I almost wish my season wasn't over. Because there's nothing like hearing the gobble. There's nothing like seeing a bird strut in your face. And I didn't get to see that. I didn't get to experience it. Believe me, I'm not complaining. It was a wonderful hunt. I got a beautiful bird. Thank you, Scott, for letting me hunt your property. And I only bring it up because every hunt, every fishing trip is different. Each one is a different experience. Each one is rewarding in its own way. And I got a bird opening day of the turkey season. Doesn't get any better than that. Now, I can concentrate on walleye fishing, right? Coming up here next week, well, this week coming up, May, it is the time to apply for our Michigan bear tags. That's the next thing on my hunting agenda. I will go to White River, Ontario in mid-August to bear hunt and then hopefully be bear hunting in the UP with Johnny Bowler here in Michigan. I told you trout and walleye seasons are open now. That used to be, man, when I was a kid, we didn't have walleye, and the trout season opener was huge. I'd spend a couple weeks before the season out there in the football field with a flashlight picking up night crawlers. Avery, I thought you don't like crawlers. I don't like crawlers for walleye fishing, but they were pretty good for trout fishing. The standoff with the geese in the backyard continues. They now have goslings, so we'll see how that affects things. The website to sign up for the Mike Avery Outdoors Charity Golf Outing is online, ready to go. It's mucc.org/golf. That is Monday, July 29th, at the West Branch Country Club. Proceeds to benefit MUCC's youth camp. If you are interested in joining us as a player and or to help sponsor the event, go to the website, mucc.org/golf, mucc.org/golf. Coming up on this week's Outdoor Magazine show after the break, you're the Bear Whisperer himself, Johnny Bowler. But we're going to talk about trout fishing. Johnny's also a trout fishing guy. Then Jay Woiderski on the Sturgeon guarding program. In our second hour, Mark Romanack on fishing rivers in the springtime for walleye, but not jigging them, trolling them. We'll talk more about that. This week's Ask Avery segment, question on bow hunting for turkeys. And in hour 3, Richard P. Smith helps us decide how to apply for a Michigan Bear tag to get the best odds and more. And, of course, we wrap it all up with wild game chef extraordinaire Dixie Dave Minar. My name is Mike Avery. This show is called Outdoor Magazine. My website is MikeAveryOutdoors.com, MikeAveryOutdoors.com. My email address is Mike@MikeAveryOutdoors.com. I'd love to see your pictures. I'd love to share them. Please don't send them to me in a social media message. Send them to me in an email, Mike@MikeAveryOutdoors.com. You can hear the Outdoor Magazine show in Lansing on WILS 1320 AM. You can hear us in Port Huron on WPHM 1380 AM. And north of the bridge in Newberry, WNBY 1450 AM. This segment of Outdoor Magazine brought to you by the Linwood Beach Marina and Campground. Linwood Beach can be your year-round Saginaw Bay fishing destination. And it looks like the weather maybe is going to change and cooperate and let folks get out there on Saginaw Bay to take advantage of that fishery. Linwood Beach, a great place to do that. Great facilities, great boat launch, complete marine shop. They can help you get your boat ready for the water. They can get you a slip for the summertime and maybe even a spot in the campground. LinwoodBeachMarina.com, LinwoodBeachMarina.com. Linwood Beach will be the site of this year's Walleye for Warriors event and also for the Angler Quest Owners Tourney as well. More on that coming up. All right. My guest right now, he's a myth. He's a legend. He's bigger than life. He's the Bear Whisperer. But Johnny Bowler also does more than just hunt bears, and he's with us on the Outdoor Magazine phone line now to talk about that. Johnny, how you doing, buddy?
Pretty good, Mike. A little tired, but I'm good.
You're tired because you're running all over the state the last couple of days.
Oh, yeah.
But, we think of you, I think of you as a bear hunting guide. But, Johnny, you spend a lot of the summer chasing brook trout, don't you?
Oh, yeah. One of my most favorite sports to do.
Why is that?
For the size of the fish and the fight that you can have with them is amazing.
And where you're fishing there, I mean, it's some pretty wild country.
Oh, yeah. You can fish the fox. You can fish the spreads off the East Branch. Used to go back there with my father-in-law close to 30 years ago now, 32. And we did really good back in there. That's like a 45-minute walk just to get into some, fishing is. I'm getting a little too weak to do that nowadays.
Well, you got to be in shape because you got to be ready to drag my bear out of the woods this fall.
Oh, yeah. Don't worry about that.
Hey, you mentioned the Fox. That, of course, a river that Hemingway made famous. He called it the Big Two-Hearted River. How cool is it, though, for you to fish a river like that that's got such history and a reputation?
I just wish, Mike, that the fish were as big now as they were then.
Really?
Because they had there had to be some dandies back then.
Well, how is the fishing now compared to 30 years ago when you were fishing with your father-in-law?
I'll tell you, on the fox, it depends on the day, the water temperature, but it's still good fishing. You just don't get as many big ones as you used to.
Are we talking all brookies, Johnny?
Yep, in the fox, they're all brookies. If you get over in the East Branch, you can catch some browns, which are really good.
So what's a big brook trout to you?
A good one is anywhere from 12 inches up. You have a good time fighting them get them into the boat, or especially if you're wading. If you're wading and you're just about over the waders, you're going to have.
So how do you get back into them? Do you float the river or do you walk back in?
Well, I always waded the river before, and now we take a 10-foot pram, and a buddy of mine came up last year, and we took kayaks, and that was actually one of the best ways to do it.
How come?
There's more room, I should say, and you can get into the holes. Like if there's two people in a boat and you're going down the river, it's, one person fishes up front of the boat and the other person fishes off the side of the boat. And to me, that's a pain in the rear. But it worked for all the years that I've ever went and done it. We've had good success, but if you can get in and wade it, it's way better because you can fish the hole a lot longer, depending on how strong the current is. And of course, this year, with what people call it a easy winter, there's not much. The water is really low, and it should be really good this Saturday, except for it looks like we're going to get rain.
Mm-hmm.
But it should be, when the river is down, you fish the holes. That's where the fish are.
I have fished the Fox before. It's been a long, long time. Remind me, is that like a big creek or is it a small river? Remind me the size of it. I'm having a hard time picturing it, Johnny.
You can go anywhere from probably 10 foot wide down to 3 foot wide, but I mean, it's wadeable. But when you get down to the corners, the bends and all that, you can stand up and drink water. So. I mean, it's not a huge. It's a long river. It goes from north of Seney all the way down to meet up with the Manistee River down in Germfast. So it's a good stretch. I couldn't tell you how many miles it is, but it takes you at least 2 days to get all the way down to Germfast in a kayak.
And do you fish that whole stretch? Do you fish the whole river?
I've only fished probably. Give or take 12 miles of the river.
That's a lot of water, though.
Oh yeah, it's a lot of water, and it's a really fun sport. It's really fun. We used all depends on would try out Panther Martins to start with. That's a spinner bait. I know a lot of people use MEPs, but I don't like them. And then go back to the old crawler on a Aberdeen hook or a minnow. You just got to keep testing them until you find out which one they're biting on. And normally when the mosquitoes are bad, you can, and the horseflies are bad, you can really catch the trout because they're eating. You know what I mean? They're coming to the surface to get the bugs.
So what you're saying is you earn these fish.
Sometimes you do, then sometimes you give up and you go home empty-handed because you can't take it. The horseflies and the deer flies just tear you up.
Why? What don't you like about the MEPs?
The shape of the U. Let's see where the spinner attaches to the main wire. It's like a U shape, and sometimes it'll just lay flat and it won't spin. Now Panther Martin has got a hole in it where the wire goes through the hole, and it'll spin. You don't even really need a current. You just pull a little bit and it'll spin. It'll flash. You know what I mean?
So how do you fish these things? Are you quarter casting? Are you fish them downstream, upstream? How do you do it, Johnny?
I fish downstream, and so many years ago, when my dad took us as kids at 5, 6 years old, we always fished upstream so we didn't spook the fish.
Mm-hmm.
Then I met my father-in-law and went fishing with him, and we always fished downstream. And kind of hard to break an old habit, but he told me, he says, deer walks you to water, bear walks you to water, and the fish don't get scared. He said, so I'll tell a little trick here. So when you're standing there, and let's say you get a bite, but you don't really want it, you kind of kick the bottom of the water up on them, and then they will it pushes dirt and stuff down through, and you'll catch a fish out of that hole. So I kind of switched my fishing techniques to going downstream, to just chumming them, per se.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And next thing you know, boom, they're hitting.
Well, I've seen pictures. I mean, you've sent me pictures of some of your better days on the water, and it's pretty darn impressive.
Yeah. No, I like that sport, and I use an ultralight rod, and they're a blast.
So, what pound test, by the way?
Well, I used the oh lordy, Stren, probably 6 pound test line, and it's the Ultra Vision.
So so with 6 pound test, then are you bringing a whole pocket full of spinners? I mean, aren't you going to lose a bunch of them? Well,
you can. If I took you, you would lose them all. I would probably maybe lose one. I'll tell you the reason. I fished it for so long, Mike, that I know where the holes are, and you know what is under there. I know that sounds funny, but
no, I'm just thinking, if you take me fishing, you better tell me not to throw into that snag. If I'm standing there and you let me throw into a snag, I'm going to be mad, Johnny.
No, it's a lot of fun, and like I say, it depends on the depth of the water, how much water. If there's no runoff, it's going to be great. It shouldn't be. There's no problem. But when it's, we get a bunch of rain or it's a bad runoff season, you have troubles because the current takes you wherever it wants to go.
Hey, before I have to let you go, how do you fish crawlers then? What's your technique for that?
So get a number 6 Aberdeen hook, and you thread them up. You take like a quarter of the crawler, thread it onto the hook. That way, when they bite it, they bite the whole thing. They don't just nibble the end off it.
Any split shot? Are you bouncing it off the bottom, just drifting it through suspended, or what?
I take a 1/8 ounce sinker about a foot up, and that's the other thing. When you're using a spinner, get yourself a barrel swivel. That way, your line don't sit there and spin and rabble up. Your barrel swivel will keep that from doing it.
Mm. Well, I there's something about trout fishing in Michigan, and the water that you're on, Johnny, is so cool. I appreciate you sharing some time with us, and I want to remind people that next week is time to start applying for Michigan Bear Tags. And should somebody get in touch with you ahead of time, say, hey, I'm going to apply, or should they wait until they get a tag to reach out to you?
If they have enough points and they feel they're going to get a tag, I would call early, because this year might be the year that I have a lot of return customers coming, because like you have 3 points. You should have had a tag last year. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
0 to 1, you get, they say a tag, but now you'll be going on your 3rd point. Yeah. So you should get a tag.
All right, Johnny. Listen, I got to let you go. You can find Johnny Bowler on Facebook, or you can send me an email to mike@mikeaveryoutdoors.com. I can put you in touch with Johnny. But Johnny's going to get me a bear this fall. So listen, you can hunt with Johnny, but you can't get in the way of Johnny getting me a bear. That's our agreement. We'll take a break. When we come back, we'll talk a little sturgeon right here on Outdoor Magazine. hear the Outdoor Magazine show in Alpena on WZTK. That's 105.7 FM. You can hear us in Flint on Sports Extra 1330 WTRX, and you can hear us north of the bridge in Marquette, WDMJ 1320 AM. This segment of Outdoor Magazine, speaking of north of the bridge, is brought to you by the company that makes this sound. That's the sound of my Rapid River knife opening. I just took it out of my pocket right now. You know I love Rapid River knives. Michigan-based, family-owned, lifetime guarantee. The knife that I'm holding in my hands right now was given to me by Chris Durson of Rapid River, and I will pass this down to the next generation. It's going to last that long. It is a wonderful tool. I would encourage you, if you can, to stop by the showroom on US 2 just east of Rapid River and check them out. You can pick out your knife in person. You can get it engraved. If you can't make it to the showroom, go to the website rapidriverknifeworks.us, and you can order online. If you go to the showroom or online, use the promo code Avery10, Avery10, and you can get 10% off on your order. How cool is that? rapidriverknifeworks.us. Well, from brook trout to walleye to sturgeon. Jay Woiderski is with the Sturgeon for Tomorrow group, sturgeonfortomorrow.org, and we find him in a very interesting place this week as he joins us on the phone line. Jay, welcome back to the show. How are you?
I'm doing great, Mike. How about you?
I'm doing great, but if you're where I think you are, you have a little better view than I do here in the studio.
I'm sitting right on top of the high banks on the upper Black River, waiting for the sturgeon to get busy up here.
This sturgeon guarding program, right? This is an annual event by you folks?
Yes, it is.
And what's the purpose of it, Jay?
Well, the purpose of this is to prevent people from coming up here and poaching the sturgeon while they're up here spawning. This has been a thing going on since they tried to shut down the fishing season back in 1999. Sturgeon for Tomorrow went down to the NRC and basically said, we will do whatever it takes to keep this season open. What can we do? And this is what we came up with. Poaching was a very big issue back then, and it has pretty much been diminished up in this area. I'm not going to tell you it's diminished everywhere, but in the upper Black River, I think we've got a really good handle on it.
That's interesting, Jay. I had not heard that story before. I didn't know the impetus of the program, so congrats on that. You say you're waiting for them to get busy. What's the timing looking like this year?
Well, actually, they started up here about a week ago, and then we got this cold weather, and it cooled the water down. The temperature needs to be 50 degrees or better for the sturgeon to come up here and spawn the way they should. It has cooled back down. I expect after the warm weather's coming in this weekend and the warm rain, that next week we'll be very active here. They've already handled the MSU Little Traverse Bay Band's researchers that have been in here have handled 51 fish so far. So there has been some action, but not nearly as much as we would expect is coming shortly.
What do you mean by handled?
They actually go in the river, they net the fish, they measure them, weigh them, take dimensions, and when this gets going well enough, they'll actually milk some of the eggs and sperm out and create baby fish.
So when these giant fish are spawning, then they're pretty accessible. They're pretty vulnerable.
That's exactly the problem. That's why we're here, because you can literally walk up and just pick one up or net it. Spearing was a thing way back when. So yes, they're not aware of any human presence at all. They're just busy trying to procreate.
What a cool thing to see, though.
Absolutely, it's wonderful to be here. This is a beautiful place in nature all by itself, and when the sturgeon are in here, it is just extremely exciting.
So, and the thing about sturgeon is they're different from other fish in so many ways, but they don't necessarily spawn every year, and they have to be a certain age before they even attempt to spawn, right?
Yeah, I think the best estimate on what's going on with the fish is 15 to 18 years probably for a male before they will begin to spawn, and they will spawn potentially every couple of years. The females is closer to 20 to 25 years, and they spawn probably every 4 to 6 years.
So every attempt to spawn, every little sturgeon they produce is potentially a pretty valuable resource.
Absolutely.
How long will you guys be there on the riverbanks for this project this year, do you think?
We set up for 6 weeks.
6 weeks.
If it slows down before that, we may pull a little bit early, but we start usually about the 20th of April. This year the fish were in about 5 days early for that, so I came out here early and set up, but we didn't sign any guards up here till the 20th, and this could run as late as the 10th or 15th of June.
Jay, hang tight. We've got to take a break here in the Outdoor Magazine Show. We're talking with Jay Woiderski of the Sturgeon for Tomorrow group, the website sturgeonfortomorrow.org, sturgeonfortomorrow.org. When we come back, I want to ask Jay a couple of things. Number one, are they still looking for volunteers? If you'd like to be a part of this, if you experience this, can you? And also, there's some interesting news about the status of sturgeon these days, and I'll let Jay announce what that is. That's coming up after the break, right here on Outdoor Magazine. You can hear the Outdoor Magazine Show in Battle Creek on WBCK. That's 95.3 FM. You can hear us in Holland on WHTC, 1450 AM, 99.7 FM. And you can hear us, let's go to the Sioux. WKNW 1400 AM. This segment of Outdoor Magazine brought to you by Matt Smith Outdoors Realtor. Matt is a longtime friend of mine, is an expert at finding recreational properties and vacation homes, and he can help your family turn a dream into a reality. You can learn more online at Matt Smith Outdoors on Facebook and Instagram. And by the way, if you're looking for a new home as your primary residence, Matt can help you out there as well. That's Matt Smith Outdoors on Facebook and Instagram, Matt Smith Outdoors. While you are poking around the internet, please check out my website, MikeAveryOutdoors.com. Then head on over to SturgeonForTomorrow.org. That's the website of the Black Lake chapter of Sturgeon for Tomorrow. Their members are busy this time of year protecting giant spawning sturgeon. Jay Woiderski is on the bank of the river right now. Jay, what is it that you ask people to do? I mean, are they in the river with these fish, protecting these fish? Are they patrolling the banks? What is it exactly?
Well, basically, we do not get in the river. We don't want anybody in the river. As these fish are in there spawning, obviously, they're laying their eggs, and we surely don't want people walking in there. The only people in the river are the researchers. We basically are along the shore of the river. And we are just here as a presence. We don't want people to confront anybody. We don't want people to try to convince people, that are up here poaching, if that's a thing. Our job here is to observe, be seen, and if there is something suspicious, we call the DNR. That's what we do. We want our people just to come up here and enjoy the beauty of the great outdoors.
I would like to think at this point, though, your program is so well established and so well known that just your presence alone would be enough to, I don't want to say completely stop the problem, but certainly have a positive impact.
I believe that's exactly correct. I mean, originally when we first started, there was incidents where, people were up in here and the DNR was notified and things were handled. We really have not had any contact with anybody looking to poach a sturgeon that we are aware of in the last few years, for sure.
Are you still looking for people to help?
We are always looking for people to help. We do have a pretty full schedule of volunteers, but there's always room for more. We actually have opportunities where we have people that camp up here on a regular basis. All our ambassadors pretty much camp here so that we have somebody on site 24 hours a day. We have the ability to go into our website and sign up for volunteers there. Go into the Sturgeon Guard tab, and you'll find a place to sign up. We do have quite a few people already here for the next 4 weeks, which is the most active part of the spawning time for the fish. So that's when people really want to be here.
Sure. And again, that website, sturgeonfortomorrow.org, sturgeonfortomorrow.org. And I understand there is some interesting news regarding sturgeon and endangered species. What's going on, Jay?
Well, a group out of Arizona had filed a petition to have lake sturgeon placed on the endangered species list. That was filed back in 2018. There was a ruling came out a while back, said this decision had to be made before the end of June, and actually on Earth Day, to be very fitting, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service made the ruling that the fish would not be put on the endangered species list. For us and anybody working with sturgeon in the rehabilitation part of it, and for the sportsmen, the anglers, absolutely, this is very good news.
Because why? Because it still allows a very limited sturgeon harvest, but what else, Jay?
Well, the reality is that I can't imagine the extra permit requirements there would be for the guys doing the research in the river.
Gotcha. Yep.
And not only that, but as Mike Avery knows, he's been down on the St. Clair River and caught a sturgeon down there. Even catch and release, that would now be illegal because you would not be able to target sturgeon for fishing.
Gotcha. And I think what the guys doing, and gals, the people down there on St. Clair River, what they're doing with promoting that fishery, that is also important in putting out positive information about sturgeon, just like you guys are doing up there to protect them. Down there, they're promoting a catch and release fishery, but it's all good because people are thinking about sturgeon as a resource, one that needs to be protected, but something that can be enjoyed.
Absolutely. I mean, it's one of the best things in the world is the education of people about sturgeon and their plight and how we are working to make them, come back and be as plentiful as they were once. That is in the works today. I mean, this for us started 25 years ago, and today we're just beginning to see the results of that work that started 25 years ago.
Well, you're doing a great job, Jay. Keep it up. I appreciate your time this week. Have fun there on the riverbank. Jay Woiderski of Sturgeon for Tomorrow. The website, sturgeonfortomorrow.org. Sturgeonfortomorrow.org. If you want to sign up to help, that's the way to do that, sturgeonfortomorrow.org. It's an interesting, it's almost an awe-inspiring sight to see those giant fish laying there in 2 feet of water, spawning 5 feet in front of you. Pretty cool. Sturgeonfortomorrow.org. We'll take a break. When we come back, Mark Romanack in hour 2 of this week's Outdoor Magazine.
Time now for Michigan's #1 outdoor radio show, Mike Avery's Outdoor Magazine. Mike Avery has covered the outdoors in Michigan for more than 4 decades, and that tradition continues today. Outdoor Magazine is brought to you by Jay's Sporting Goods, the Eider Insurance Group, Angler Quest Pontoons, the Forward Corporation, Primal Outdoors, Security Credit Union, Offshore Tackle, Garber Chevrolet, Rapid River Knife Works, and by Michigan Brand Meats. Now, here's Mike Avery.
Well, thank you, Ken Hunter, for that introduction, and welcome to hour number 2 of this week's Outdoor Magazine radio show here on the Outdoor Magazine radio network on more than 30 radio stations across the great state of Michigan. And I firmly believe the best way to listen to this show, if you can, is on your local radio station. your local AM or FM station. Get your local news and weather and sports. Maybe there's a sale, a commercial, an ad, some kind of a spot that you want to take advantage of. I'm a big, big fan of local radio. If you can't hear the show on your local radio station, though, it's nice to know that there is a podcast version of the content made available. It's the same. If you listen to the show on a radio station, it's a radio show. If you listen to it as a podcast, it's the same content. You're just listening to it somewhere else. Where do you hear the podcast? Well, you hear it on my website, MikeAveryOutdoors.com. It's on my Facebook page, Amazon Music, Audible. I'm not even going to go through the whole list. Suffice to say, probably anywhere you can hear a podcast, you can hear the podcast version of Outdoor Magazine, including YouTube. I actually put a version up on YouTube every week. I am a big fan of podcasting, though. Each month I do podcasts for Offshore Tackle, Primal Outdoors. In fact, when we're done here in the studio today, I'll do a podcast for Primal, talking with Philip Culpepper of Hunt Club TV. And then next week we're going to reinstate the Angler Quest podcast. I want to get Brad Dupuis back on to talk about the state of those big water trolling machines and how that company is being reborn. So regardless, though, of how you're hearing my voice, when you are hearing my voice, thank you so much. I do appreciate it. I wouldn't be able to do this as long as I have without your support, and it does mean a lot to me. Throughout this journey, I've had some wonderful experiences, some wonderful partnerships, some wonderful friendships. I've had a chance to really get to know some really very special people. Mark Romanack is one of them. You know Mark, Fishing 411 TV, the Precision Trolling, Precision Angling books. I met Mark back when I was working at a local TV station in Saginaw, and he was a naturalist at the Greenpoint Nature Center. A lot has happened in those 40 years. We'll bring Mark on the phone line now to talk more about that. Mark, when you think about that, for both of us, a lot has happened, hasn't
it? A lot of gray hair has happened, I can tell you that,
Mike. Yeah, but we're both still here.
Yep. And it's been a good ride. I can't complain. Like you, I've been blessed to work in the outdoor industry pretty much my whole life. And it is a great place to be and great people to work with.
And these days, I don't get the feeling that you're slowing down at all. I mean, I know I know you've got Jake there to help out these days, but Mark, I don't see you backing down at all.
Well, I don't really want to slow down. I mean, what they say about retiring, I just don't think I fit that mold. I want to be active.
Yeah.
I want to stay as active and young as I can, and I think the way to do that is to hang out with a bunch of young people who are crazy about fishing, and so that's kind of my goal. Stick it out with the young guys.
Have you always been crazy about fishing?
I've always liked it, and I've always had an interest in it. And I think my earliest memories of fishing were, catching creek chubs in the local little creeks, where I grew up, near Clio, Michigan, and then it just kind of expanded from there. And these days we're doing it a little bit more sophisticated, I guess, but yeah, the passion for fishing has never changed.
Where do we find you now? I think you guys are shooting a show right now, aren't you?
Yeah. In fact, we're in what's called East Chicago. That's down in the southwest corner of Lake Michigan, targeting cohos. So fishing's been real good. Today the wind is blowing. This is actually working out nice to do the interview with you because the wind is blowing real hard today. So today would have been a below day anyway. So this is actually worked out nice that we're accomplishing something. Otherwise, we'd have been sitting in a janky motel waiting for the weather to get better.
How many days do you set aside on your schedule for a show?
Well, some shoots go pretty smoothly, and we get them done actually in a day. If the weather and the fish are biting, the weather's good and fish are biting, it's usually we can get them in a day. But oftentimes we pre-fish for a day or two before and then film for a couple days. So, if you set an average of 4 days and then there's 13 shows, you can do the math. That's how many, what we have invested in creating the television shows. But then there's more to it. Then we have to do the breakout segments, which there's days tied into that. Breakout segments are essentially a segment within the TV show that is not the same content. It's something different than the topic of that show for that week. So that pretty much doubles the commitment. So we're on the water a lot, and plus we're not filming. I like to fish. I go fishing all the time just for fun.
Even now, if you don't have a camera, you still go fishing for fun.
Absolutely. In fact, we have lots of sponsors that want to get out and have enjoyable trips. We got several of those trips planned this year. My family's always after me. They want me to take them fishing. My brothers and
and sisters, and my wife enjoys fishing a lot, and so and family, friends, and stuff. So we get more than our fair share of time on the water. Probably, I don't know. I've never sat down and added it up, Mike, but somewhere around 100 days a year we get to fish.
And it looks like from the outside you do everything possible to put the odds in your favor to make it a productive trip. I mean, you're doing research ahead of time before you ever leave. You're talking to people. I mean, you've got to try to help the odds as much as possible. I mean, you guys are good fishermen, but you still need all the help you can get in certain cases, I would think.
Well, I guarantee you we couldn't do it on our own. It's there's just too many bodies of water, too many places to go. Can't be knowledgeable about all of that, and so I call them boots on the ground. They're my contact people that feed me information, so that I know about what's happening, when it's happening, approximately what they're doing as far as for presentations and stuff. And then when the weather window looks good, the timing looks good, then we'll go and spend a day or two pre-fishing to confirm that the information we're getting is accurate, because as you know, in fishing things change very quickly. And then if we have a good pre-fish and it looks like, the weather is going to hold up, we pull the pin and bring in the rest of the crew and shoot a television show. So that's kind of been our MO. It works really well for us. We don't like to show up cold turkey because fish have a great way of humbling you when you come unprepared.
I don't know. I can't. I know. Yeah, fish can do that. But for you, Mark Romanack, I don't know. I feel like when you step into a boat on a body of water, I feel like you have a level of confidence that you say, we're going to catch fish today. And I feel like when you are confident, when you leave the dock, things go in your favor because you approach the pursuit, the activity of fishing in a different way if you have that mindset.
Well, we definitely put our time into the research, and the Internet's a great tool in that regard, because there's really no secrets out there. If you're willing to dig and research, you can find out the information you're looking for. Even remote bodies of water, you'd be surprised how much information is out there. We use, in fact, ironically, I'm researching a place up in Ontario where we're going to brook trout fish. We're using satellite images because the lakes aren't mapped up there, so there's no hydrographic maps to study. But guess what? There's these satellite images, and if you get a good satellite image that was taken on a clear day, you can see a ton from the air as far as for structure, what the lake looks like, where the water is shallow, where the water is deep, points, islands, things that are going to be contact points for fish. It's amazing. So we use the internet and Google Maps a lot to do our research.
And I know from our past conversations that one of the things you at least used to in the past love to do this time of year, or maybe a few weeks ago, was target these big Ontario ice out monster pike.
That's always been something that I've enjoyed. In recent years, we haven't had much opportunity to do that. The places where big pike are prevalent are typically limited to really wilderness areas. They're just too easy to catch. And so big pike don't seem to thrive very well in populated areas. So largely fly-in type adventures. And because of what we do now with boats and the motors, the electronics, planer board companies like Offshore, these are companies that are interested in open water fishing. They're interested in us fishing in our own gear to produce television shows. And you can't do that on a fly-in trip.
Sure.
On a fly-in trip, you're fishing out of a small boat or whatever happens to be there, whatever motor they use. Probably no sonar. We can't do those types of trips and do diligence for the brands that we represent. So we film virtually every single show now out of either Jake's boat or my boat.
Well, and you talk about those partnerships. Believe me, I know how important partnerships are, but you guys have established some great partnerships, some long-term relationships. I'm thinking of you guys and StarCraft. I mean, a lot the world of fishing and boating, sometimes it gets a little topsy-turvy, but you guys, I see you day in and day out pretty much partnered up with the same people year after year. I think that's a good thing.
Well, I think so. And it's hard to keep those relationships going over a long time because it's not just the companies themselves that are evolving, but the people who work at the companies come and go. Mm-hmm. And so if you've got a good working relationship with, say, a marketing director at brand X, and then he leaves and goes to another brand, you may find yourself, not in the same situation. You may not be able to work with that company anymore because the new guy, might want to do things differently. And
done that one.
That's just the way. And that's just the way it is. I mean, it's not, it's not a knock against the companies or anything. It's just the way the industry is. And people move around a lot, particularly in the marketing, departments, because they started a small brand and then they move up to a middle-sized brand and then they move up to a big brand. And that's how people move up the corporate ladder.
Sure.
And as those people move, they change things.
Hang tight, Mark. We're talking with Mark Romanack of Fishing 411, fishing411.net. We've got to take a break. When we come back, I'll get to the subject at hand, which is trolling rivers in the springtime for walleye. We think of jigging, right? Drifting and jigging. Well, I've watched Mark in action trolling the Saginaw River years ago, and I think it's a pretty interesting concept. We will talk about that and much more with Mark Romanack of Fishing 411, fishing411.net after the break right here on Outdoor Magazine. You can hear the Outdoor Magazine show in Traverse City on WTCM. That's 580 AM. You can hear us in St. Joe on WSJM 94.9 FM. And you can hear us in the Ute in Manistee, WTIQ 1490 AM 95.3 FM. This segment of Outdoor Magazine brought to you by VersaSkins, Michigan-based, family-owned VersaSkins. I was wearing a VersaSkins jacket last weekend for the opener of the Michigan turkey season, and I was darn glad I had it because it was cold, cold, cold. But that VersaSkins kept me as warm as possible. VersaSkins, an interesting concept because rather than buy a bunch of different sets of hunting clothes, you can buy one good quality set and then snap on and zip on an outer shell of a different camo pattern. Change your skin for the season you're in, they call it. I think it's really a great concept. Also, if you need big sizes, I'm talking 4, 5, 6X, VersaSkins can help you out there. And finally, if you are one of the new generation of saddle hunters, which is the hottest thing in whitetail hunting today, if you are a saddle hunter, VersaSkins makes jackets specifically for saddle hunters. Check them out online at versaskins.com. That's versaskins.com. While you are online, please head over to my website, MikeAveryOutdoors.com, and then wander over to fishing411.net. When you get there, you will find so much information, so much knowledge, so much video. It's just a wealth of information, just like the man behind Fishing 411 is. His name is Mark Romanack. And Mark, when I asked you to be on the show, I threw out the concept of trolling rivers for walleye. I saw you did something down on the Detroit River, but it reminded me of a shoot we did years and years ago on the Saginaw River. I was actually behind a camera. You guys were on the Saginaw River. Nobody out there, nobody trolling, and you knocked the snot out of those fish. So this whole concept of trolling for walleye in the river system, though underutilized, certainly isn't new to you, is it?
Well, it's not new. And for whatever reason, people have really not gravitated towards trolling in flowing water. And there's some exceptions. Definitely there's some exceptions. In the St. Clair River, they do the whipping technique, which I'm sure you've heard about. And in the Detroit River, there's a lot of hand line trollers where they're trolling plugs with heavy weights, using wire line to get down. And those are, mainstream. People do that and have been doing it for a long time. But traditional trolling with a crankbait, trolling rod, monofilament line, planer boards like the Offshore Tackle, OR12, doing that in rivers is something that very few people realize is positive and, is fruitful, catches a lot of fish. And especially later in the walleye run in the springtime. This is a post-spawn thing. I'm not saying you couldn't do this earlier in the year, but when you start getting these fish that are done spawning and dropping back out of the river, they're looking for food. They're hungry, and so that puts you in a great position. And they also tend to set up on shallower water, flats in places where you actually can get a crankbait down to those fish, whereas it would be pretty hard to get a diving crankbait down 30 feet in the Detroit River and be successful with it. So it sets up about this time of year, late April and through the month of May. If you're looking to catch a bunch of walleyes trolling on river flats, I guarantee you can smoke them on the Detroit River, and you can also smoke them on the Saginaw River.
And I would suspect, I wonder, St. Joe, Muskegon, different rivers across the state, I would imagine.
Well, Muskegon's interesting because that comes out into Muskegon Lake, which is called the Drowned River Mouth Lake. And what the guys do there is they troll along the riprap wall, the riprap that leads out to Lake Michigan.
Mm-hmm.
And so they're trolling crankbaits there, but they're doing it, with a little bit different kind of system than what I did in the Detroit River. So yeah, there's some opportunities there as well. And again, those are post-spawn fish. Those are fish that have done their thing, and then they're heading back out to wherever they're going to spend the summer. And the lower Detroit is one that I like to talk about just because of the vast amount of room and space that's there. That lower end of the Detroit River is huge because you got to realize it's not just Michigan waters, it's also Ontario waters. And so you've got, the width of the river at the mouth there by Trenton, probably, 2.5, 3 miles wide. And you've got an enormous amount of water there that you can fish and spread out. And that's not typically the areas where you're seeing a lot of jiggers. So you're not really in conflict with the people who are jigging. They tend to jig the deeper channels of the river.
So is there much of a current down in that part of the river?
Surprisingly, there is. And, there's still quite a bit of water moving there. And that's the reason why we use deep diving crankbaits, because a traditional crankbait, like what we fished in the Saginaw River, if I remember that correctly, I think we were fishing Selma Hornets, probably a number 5 or a number 6. And that bait is a modest diving bait, but there's not much current in the Saginaw River, and so it got down to the bottom pretty easily. In the Detroit River, that current is smoking, and so even at the low end of the river, it's moving pretty good. So you have to do a deeper diving crankbait to get down. We were using that PWC from Bill Lewis, which will dive about 30 foot in still water, and so we were able to get that bait deep enough in the water column to target suspended fish and also to target some of those bottom hugging structure fish.
All right, stupid question. Are you trolling upstream or down?
No, it's not a stupid question because it's profoundly important. Trolling downstream doesn't seem to produce very well. Not exactly sure why. But when you troll downstream, you catch some, you don't catch many. When you turn around and you troll into the current, that's when things start to happen. And we try to maintain a speed over ground where we're just getting progress upstream at about 1.2 to 1.5 miles an hour. So in other words, you're crawling upstream and you're just keeping those baits right in the strike zone, and these fish don't seem to be able to help themselves. We could go into Detroit River. We probably in the afternoon shoot where we filmed there, we probably touched between 20 and 30 fish in 4 hours of fishing. That's pretty good fishing.
Well, yeah, that whole fishery down there, Detroit River, Lake Erie, the size fish they get out of Erie in the springtime, it's, I'm a Saginaw Bay guy, and I think it's a great fishery, but the size of fish downstate is just so impressive.
Well, it is. And, we caught a couple of what I would call small males in that, 18 to 19-inch range. But the vast majority of the fish we caught were females that are post-spawn, spawned out females that were 20, 22, 24, 25, 26 inches long. So really nice fish that are going to range from 3 to 7 pounds. Those are high-quality fish, no question about it. And the numbers of them that are there, pretty staggering. As you know, Lake Erie is living up to its reputation for being the world's greatest walleye fishery.
So you're putting those PWC, the walleye crank baits, on your OR12s, the offshore OR12s, and just running them out to the side, just like you would troll, say, open water Lake Erie or Saginaw Bay?
Exactly. It's because the flats are relatively shallow, 10 foot to about 15 foot is what you're targeting. You don't have very long lead lengths. So a deep diving bait on a relatively modest lead length, 15 to 30 foot back, was pretty much our best setup. And that was covering, like fish that are suspended in the water column. That would also get down near the bottom, so you're covering those fish that are hugging tight to the bottom. As you know, walleyes will be in both locations. Post-spawn walleyes have no problem suspending because these are transient fish. They're moving out of the river. They're moving back towards their summer haunts, and they do so suspended in the water column. But when an easy meal comes, creeping by them, they can't resist. And like I say, post-spawn walleyes are hungry. And so that's, I think, why this system works so well. We'd for two of us, we had a six board spread, 3 rods on each side. And it was all you could do to keep your 3 lines in the water.
And I love those shorter lead lengths, too. It makes for easier fishing, clean, less tangles for the inexperienced. It's just a simple, easy, nice, productive way to fish.
Absolutely. And, And if a person is concerned about, I can't tell when I've got a fish on a planer board, you'll have no trouble knowing when you've got a fish on a planer board when you've got a short lead, because that board goes back like a rocket.
Well, that sounds like so much fun. And I'm also excited. You mentioned the PWC. Is that Precision Walleye Crank? Is that the name of it again?
Precise Walleye
Precise,
Crank.
okay.
And, we were using the full-size bait. We have two baits now. We have the PWC, which is about the size of a reef runner, to put in perspective, a lure that you would be very familiar with, in that 4.5 to 5 inch range. And then we also have a 3.5 inch bait now that is a little smaller. We call the PWC Light. It's about the size of, my reference would be like a deep junior thunderstick, a storm bait, to put it in perspective.
Well, last time I was at Jay's, I walked over to the fishing department and I bought a handful of those things. Thinking, Saginaw Bay. I haven't tried them yet, but for one thing, I was real impressed with them, Mark. They're obviously very well made. They look like they're going to hold up very well. But I see that potentially as a real good summertime Saginaw Bay bait. Am I thinking the right direction here?
Yeah, actually a year-round bait probably. We've had a lot of success on Saginaw Bay with the PWCs, primarily fishing them in the fall and in the springtime when the water's cold. And in recent years, we've had access to the bay pretty much year-round. I mean, we haven't had much ice or much winter weather in recent years. So the cold water, that bait has really performed. But you're right, in the summertime when those fish move out in deeper water, the PWC is going to be an advantage also, because you'll be able to get deep with shorter or modest leads. The PWC Light was designed with Saginaw Bay in mind, because most of the guys are fishing in shallow water, and you don't need a super deep diving bait to get to the bottom, and say in May and June. When that water warms up and people start doing a lot of crankbait trolling, flicker shads, number 7s are probably the go-to bait there, and I think this PWC Light is going to take a chunk of that market.
Did you have input, or do you have input into the color patterns on those baits?
Yeah, we did, but we also had some help. There's a company called JT Customs, and they do an excellent job of custom painting crankbaits, and they have some of the best paint patterns out there and some of the best painters out there. So we consulted them to use some of their patterns that we knew from experience had were working on other baits. And so about half of the Bill Lewis baits are factory colors. About half of them are JT custom colors. And then if you're that guy that likes to paint your own crankbaits, and there's a lot of guys doing that now, they make blanks that you can paint your own crankbaits if you want. So you can just order the lures with no paint, and then and paint your own to whatever specifications you're looking to try to achieve.
Well, I'm looking forward to giving them a try. Hey, Mark, since it is a blow day and I've got an open segment, can I offer you the coveted third segment coming up?
Sure. I'm believe it or not, Mike, I'm sitting here looking at the wind blowing my pickup truck. So yeah, I would enjoy it.
All right, that sounds good. We'll take a break here in the Outdoor Magazine Show. We're talking with Mark Romanack of Fishing 411, fishing411.net, fishing411.net. When we come back, I want to talk more about trolling, but we're gonna take this kind of a little bit to a geek level almost here. We're going to talk about the Troller's Bible. And it was called the Troller's Bible back when it was in print only, because it was like everybody who trolled. I mean, anybody who trolled who was a serious troller had the Troller's Bible in their book. And it was a binder of laminated dive charts. Laminated so they could get wet. These days, it's the app. It's the Precision Trolling app, but it's the same thing. It is a tool you use to decide or to find out how deep your baits are going. And it's a very, very valuable tool. So we'll talk about that, the subtleties, the nuances, and more with Mark Romanack of Fishing 411, fishing411.net. You can hear the Outdoor Magazine Show in Caro on two stations, WKYO 1360 AM and WIDL 92.1 FM. You can hear us in Tawas, WIOS 1480 AM, 106.9 FM. And north of the bridge in Escanaba, WCHT 600 AM, 93.5 FM. This segment of Outdoor Magazine is brought to you by Premier Maritime Training. If you've ever wanted to get your captain's license, I think this is your best bet. Captain John Littlefield taught my captain's class. He helped me become a licensed charter captain, and I think he can help you out as well. Check out the website, pmtcaptains.com, for more info, pmtcaptains.com. John has classes across the state, and I'm sure you can find one to fit your schedule. That's pmtcaptains.com. Well, talking to fishing right now, we're talking fishing with Mark Romanack of Fishing 411, fishing411.net. Mark, let's talk a little bit about precision trolling, that whole concept. I mean, by now it is so ubiquitous, it is so well established, it's so well known, but early on, did you know what you guys had at the time?
I don't know. I mean, as soon as I saw the concept of it, I immediately realized it had potential. Even though, I'm the figurehead of the company, really wasn't my original idea. The idea belonged to Dr. Stephen Holt, out of Grand Rapids, Michigan. And as you might remember, Mike, that was my tournament fishing partner. Dr. Holt and I fished tournaments together. And Steve did a lot of trolling. And of course, he's a brilliant guy. I mean, he's not only got a degree in medicine, he's also got a degree in electrical engineering. He's just absolutely a genius. And he had this idea that you could control how deep a crankbait would run in the water by simply manipulating the variables, and the variables being line diameter, lead length, trolling speed, that kind of stuff. And he had this idea, and he worked out an early book that was that flip chart that you talked about. And just pictures of the lures and a little XY graph that shows how deep the lure would go. And people immediately saw value in it. And but the problem is that Dr. Steve wasn't connected to the fishing industry, so he didn't really have any way of getting it marketed, getting it distributed through sales and and into retailers. And that's how he contacted me, and that's how I got involved in the business, because obviously I do have a foot in the door there. So it was my job to do the marketing, and then eventually we became partners, and then eventually as his life changed and he moved in a different direction, I ended up buying him out and I became the owner.
Well, and where it is today, I mean, do you know how many lures you have dive charts for?
Not exactly. I'm embarrassed to say that, but there's hundreds of lures in the app, and the total number of dive curves is numbers in the thousands. And I know that we are adding somewhere around 40 to 50 new ones a year. So
wow.
that, it's exponential. It gets bigger every year. But I've never taken the time to sit down and count them all. But geez, almost more than you can count. Certainly more than you got fingers and toes.
Well, more than you're probably ever going to have on your boat at one time. That's for sure. So what is the biggest factor? Is it speed? Is it diameter? Is it lead length? What is it, Mark?
Well, the number one thing in my mind that controls how deep a crankbait goes is how much line you let out of the lead length. Short lead lengths, baits are modest in their depth. As you increase that lead length or that distance behind the boat, they get deeper and deeper. That's the most important. But line diameter also plays an important role. And speed has an important role too, but it's not so much in how deep a lure dives. Speed is the action, and it controls the action of the lure. So at slow speeds, lures are sluggish. They don't have a lot of action. At faster speeds, the action becomes more aggressive, more lively. And so I look at speed as a triggering element. I look at it as something that's how I get fish to bite. If they're not biting at one speed, I slow down or speed up until I can create a triggering element.
Will a lure continue to dive deeper as you let more line out?
Yeah, it will. Early on, we didn't think that was going to be the case because some of the early research that was done out there suggested that most crankbaits would max out at about 120-foot lead. And when we got into the nuts and bolts of this and started experimenting with those leads and longer, we discovered that crankbaits will continue to dive if you could put, very, very long leads out. The problem is you get to a point of diminishing return. I mean, you can put, a crankbait out 300 feet, it may get you an additional 6 inches of diving depth. So it's not really a practical thing to put a crankbait that far back. So what we try to do is we test them out as far as what we think is practical. And when it reaches that point of diminishing return, then we stop testing them. Most lures, that's going to be 200 foot or less.
Yeah, personally, I mean, I start getting 100 feet of line out there, and I get nervous. I don't want that much line. I'm going to grab the app, and I'm going to say, okay, how can I get this bait or a different bait deeper with a shorter lead length? And that's where the app helps me out.
Yeah, and then of course, it's so popular these days. People use snap weight. An offshore tackle product, that they put onto their crankbait to get them deeper. And I'm the same as you, Mike. I don't like to let a crankbait back more than about 100 feet. If I have to, I will. But usually, usually I will add a weight to the line, a snap weight, to get deeper before I go to super long trolling weights.
And the snap weights are included in the dive curves. Lead core is included in there. You got the whole thing. So, Mark, always a pleasure. Look, I know your time is valuable, and I appreciate getting part of it. I would encourage people to go to the website, fishing411.net, fishing411.net. I will wish you a good fishing trip there on Southern Lake Michigan, a great season, and I'll look forward to talking with you again soon, my friend.
Thank you, Mike.
Mark Romanack of Fishing 411, fishing411.net, one of the icons in the fishing industry, and certainly an icon here in the Michigan, the world of fishing here in Michigan. We'll take a break here in the Outdoor Magazine Show. When we come back, this week's Ask Avery question. We're going to switch gears a little bit. I got somebody asking me about some advice on bow hunting for turkeys. I'm not an expert, but I do have some thoughts, and I will share those thoughts after the break right here on Outdoor Magazine. You can hear the Outdoor Magazine Show in Sheboygan on Big Country Gold, WCBY, 1240 AM, 100.7 FM. You can hear us in Houghton Lake on the Twister, 92.1 WTWS. And you can hear us north of the bridge in Iron Mountain on WMIQ, 1450 AM. The Ask Avery segment is brought to you each week by the good folks at Security Credit Union. Security Credit Union loves to work with outdoorsmen and women, and they can help you with your next outdoor adventure. Check them out online at securitycu.org. That's securitycu.org. The way the Ask Avery segment works is this is your chance to get involved in the content of the show, the programming of the show. If you have a question you would like to direct to me, or something that you want me to pose to somebody else, maybe in DNR or MUCC or somebody that I might have access to that maybe you don't, please email that question to me, Mike at MikeAveryOutdoors.com. In fact, that email address is the best way to get in touch with me overall. Whether it's a picture you want to share, you want me to share of your turkey hunting adventure, or your fishing hunting adventure, or whatever, please don't send them to me in a social media message. Just email them, Mike at MikeAveryOutdoors.com. That is what Jason Elliott did. Jason sends this email. He says, "Hey, Mike, I want to try bow hunting for turkeys this year. I've taken a few with a gun, but never a bow. I'd like to use my new compound. Any advice?" Well, again, I'm not going to tell you I'm an expert turkey hunter, and I'm not an expert bow hunter by any stretch of the imagination, but I have spent quite a bit of time hunting turkeys, and most of it has been with a bow, either a recurve, a compound, or more recently a crossbow. And it does create an interesting challenge. Turkeys are surprisingly hard to harvest with a bow. Shot placement is extremely important. Broadheads, your choice of broadheads. Because of that, a choice of broadheads. A lot of people will use a great big expandable broadhead, so you have more room for error. I have used both fixed blade heads and expandables. Personally, I'm sticking with a fixed blade just because I've had good luck with them. They fly very well. Right now I'm using the Rec, Michigan-based Rec broadheads. I use the FX4, but a big expandable would be a good choice as well. If you are going to be bow hunting for birds, you can run and gun like you would with a shotgun, but that's going to be a real challenge at first. I would recommend setting up a blind. I like the Wraith blind from Primal Outdoors. You can still get those at Jay's, by the way, using the promo code Avery424. Get one real cheap. Get yourself a couple of decoys to set in front of you, probably a couple of hen decoys. Set the blind up someplace with the sun behind you, if you can. Put those decoys out closer than what you think. Because if a bird does come right into your decoys, okay, he's going to be right in your lap. If he comes and sets up 5 yards away or so away, you've still got a nice shot. I like to set my decoys up 15 to 20 yards away. A lot of people will set them up even closer. I mentioned shot placement. It is harder to judge where to shoot a bird with a bow when he's in strut. Now, it's a beautiful, impressive sight when they come in all fanned up and strutted up and gobbling and humming and all the noises they make. It's wonderful. But when they strut, their feathers stick out, and it looks like a bigger bird than what it actually is. So if you can shoot them when they're not in strut, you get a better view of the outline of the body. If they come in strutting and that's the only shot they give you, then fine, that's the one you take. With a bow, certainly a recurve or a compound, you've got to draw that bow, which gives the bird more opportunity to see you. Even sitting in a blind, that gives them more opportunity to see you. So if they do come in strut, if you can wait till they strut and then they turn their back to you, because when they turn their back, their vision is blocked. They can't see behind them because of the fan. So if you draw when they're looking away from you, that's a good thing to do. I like to center punch the bird. I like to shoot right for the center of the bird. Whether they're, I tried the Texas heart shot before when they're facing away. I did not have any luck with it. I'm going to avoid that one in the future. You can shoot them head on if you aim just above where the beard attaches, or my favorite is straight sideways. If they're straight sideways and just center punch them, you got your best chance of hitting vitals. Wear black in that blind so you blend in, put the sun behind you. Don't hesitate to try midday hunts. Midday hunts can be especially productive when you're hunting over decoys because the toms have left the hens at that time of day and they're out exploring. Also, look for dusting bowls. Set up a blind over a dusting bowl on the edge of a field or something. As the weather starts to turn hot now, midday, those birds will come in and they'll dust midday. What else? I think that's all I got. But I tell you what, it is very rewarding to take a bird with archery gear. And if you do that, Jason, send me the picture to Mike at MikeAveryOutdoors.com. I would love to post it. And again, as always, a thank you to the folks at Security Credit Union for making each week's Ask Avery segment possible. Check them out online at securitycu.org. That's securitycu.org. We will take a break. When we come back, our final hour, we're going to switch gears completely. We're going to talk about bears, maybe deer, and more with Richard P. Smith. And, of course, we'll wrap it all up with wild game chef extraordinaire Dixie Dave Minar.
Time now for Michigan's #1 outdoor radio show, Mike Avery's Outdoor Magazine. Mike Avery has covered the outdoors in Michigan for more than 4 decades, and that tradition continues today. Outdoor Magazine is brought to you by Jay's Sporting Goods, the Eider Insurance Group, Angler Quest Pontoons, the Forward Corporation, Primal Outdoors, Security Credit Union, Offshore Tackle, Garber Chevrolet, Rapid River Knife Works, and by Michigan Brand Meats. Now, here's Mike Avery.
Indeed, this is the big guy, Mike Avery. Thank you, Ken Hunter, for that introduction. And welcome to hour number 3 of this week's Outdoor Magazine radio show. Right here on the Outdoor Magazine radio network on more than 30 radio stations across the great state of Michigan. And so glad to have you along with us on a big weekend in the Michigan outdoors. It's the opening day, or the opening weekend, of trout season across the state. Also the opener of walleye season and pike season inland in the lower. Our friends in the Yup will have to wait a couple more weeks for it. Turkey season now in full swing. This weekend's weather looks a little better than last weekend's opener. It was brutal out there. I had snow coming down sideways for 2 hours as I sat there in the blind over the decoys. And then coming up next week, May, it's time to apply for our Michigan bear and elk tags. So it's just a great time of year, a lot going on, and I hope you get a chance to get out and enjoy it in whatever way that works for you. Whatever way works, as long as you're out there, as long as you're doing something, as long as you are getting outside and doing things in the way that you want to, and God bless you. God bless you. When I started thinking about applying for my Michigan bear tag, of course, I was thinking about my buddy Johnny Bowler, the Bear Whisperer, who was actually on the show in the first hour talking about brook trout fishing in the UP. I hope to be bear hunting with Johnny again this fall. But I can't think about Michigan bears without thinking about Richard P. Smith. I mean, I've learned more about bears from him than anybody else. But he's also just an interesting guy to talk with in general, and there are a lot of things to bring up this weekend, so he has graciously agreed to join us once again. Hey, Richard, welcome back. How are you?
Great, Mike. How are you?
I am doing wonderful. It's a great time of year, and I'm just glad to be alive.
Congratulations on your turkey.
Yeah, thank you. Oh, yeah, that was... Richard, this is interesting. I was telling the story in the first hour that it was nice to get that bird on the opening day, but it was a hunt that in some ways he never gobbled and he never strutted. So I didn't get that part of the experience. And I compared that to last year when I had to hunt hard for 2.5 weeks to get a bird, but there was a lot of gobbling, a lot of strutting. Both hunts ended up with the same result. I got a bird, but they were two completely different, equally enjoyable, but two completely different hunting experiences.
Yeah, exactly. I think sometimes in areas where there's heavy hunting pressure, gobblers do gobble less.
Is a form of self-preservation.
Yeah, but I think weather is an important factor too. The temperature, wind, all those other factors play a role in how much they gobble as well.
I remember that you have taken the Michigan, the Grand Slam, where you had a book animal of every species, including a turkey. But are you still hunting birds these days, Richard?
No, I'm not, Mike. I've got other things going on in the spring, and I used to do some spring bear hunting, but I haven't in recent years due to the cost of travel and things like that. Other things going on.
So speaking of bears, let's go to the first topic here. Coming up in May, we can apply for Michigan bear and elk tags. And in the past, I would always apply for, the prime season, first season. And it would take me 9-10 years to get a tag.
Yeah.
Listening to you, there are smarter ways to apply for a Michigan bear tag that can not guarantee, but certainly increase your odds of success. What are you thinking, Richard?
Well, we have 3 distinct hunt periods for bear in the upper peninsula, all the management units except Drummond Island. Applying for that third hunt is what I always do. There is the highest number of permits available for that third hunt. The chances of success are lower than the first and second hunts, but if you really want to hunt bear, which I do, I apply for that third hunt, and it increases your chances of getting one sooner, a license sooner.
Why are the odds of success less in that third season?
Well, the days are shorter, for one thing. Once we get into September, the days are shortening. Bears that were feeding in the daytime during that first or second hunt, by the time you get to September 25th, when the third hunt starts, it's dark when many of those bears are coming in to feed at baits. But not in all cases. But you've got small game hunting starts in mid-September. That hunting effort or people presence in the outdoors can make bears more nocturnal. The chances of seeing them, and there are fewer bears available by September 25th based on those that are killed during the first and second hunts.
Do we know what the number of bear tags looks like for this year?
Yeah, bear hunting regulations are on a 2-year cycle. The first year was last year. This will be the second year in that cycle. Unfortunately, we have far fewer bear licenses for the UP than we should. There will be 5,406 bear licenses for the UP bear management units this year, the same as last year. That's about half of what the maximum number of bear permits for the UP were in 2008, when more than 10,000 permits were available. And important thing to keep in mind when you look at the number of bear licenses available, not all people who draw those licenses are going to hunt. Every year, like last year, there was only 4,237 bear hunters actually hunted out of the 5,400 licenses that were available. We're under-hunting, under-harvesting black bears in the UP. When you look at the number of permits that are going to be available for this year, unless the Natural Resources Commission changes those numbers, we have a fraction of a hunter per square mile in the current bear management units, which is very, very light hunting pressure.
A couple of follow-ups on that. So were bear numbers, what did the bear population look like in 2008 compared to right now?
We may have had a few less bears in 2008 than we do now.
But we had more tags.
We had more tags then, that's correct. We were better managing the bear population. We had fewer nuisance bear complaints during that period. There was a 10-year period where the state was issuing between 11,000 and 12,000 bear licenses in all the UP and Lower Peninsula bear management units. The high was 12,993 licenses in 2011, I think it was. And we were using a faulty, flawed method to estimate bear numbers back then. In 2012, the method they were using seemed to indicate the UP bear population was declining. So they dramatically cut bear licenses. But once they analyzed the situation, they found out that there was a mistake in the estimating method used, and there was no reason to cut licenses. Despite that fact, they have continued to reduce bear licenses in the UP since then, with no good reason, no good biological reason. In 2008, when we had almost 11,000 bear licenses in the UP and only 7,000 or so hunted, the number of bear hunters per square mile in the UP was still less than 1 hunter per square mile, like 0.65 hunter per square mile for our UP bear management units. Very light hunting pressure, even when we issued more than 10,000 licenses in the UP. And one of the most important reasons we need to increase bear harvest is to take pressure off fawns. Black bears are important predators on fawns. We have low deer numbers in the northern UP. By increasing the bear harvest, we'll increase survival of fawns, improving our deer population.
And I do want to talk more about that fawn predation, but I want to go back to the number of hunters versus the number of tags given out. Is what's the thinking here, Richard? Are these people who had the intent of going hunting and then something happened at the last minute where they couldn't? Or I keep hearing these horror stories about people who are blatantly non-hunters and have no intention of hunting a bear, but they put in for a tag knowing they can take that away from somebody who might want to go hunting.
I think most of the people that end up not hunting have a change in plans. As you know, we can start applying May 1st through June 1st. Well, that's months before the September hunting seasons. People get ill. There's family deaths within families. Things come up that aren't anticipated at the time people apply for licenses.
Sure. And that's I'm glad to hear that, because I keep hearing these horror stories of the anti-hunters trying to do that. So I get it that people's plans change. Hang tight, Richard. We got to take a break here. We're talking to Richard P. Smith, black bear expert, whitetail expert, outdoor writer, videographer. You can learn more on his website, richardpsmith.com. That's richardpsmith.com. We will take a break. When we come back, we'll talk more about predation on whitetail fawns, about how this past winter, or lack of maybe, affected our UP whitetail population, and lots more. Whatever's on Richard's brain. Coming up after the break right here on Outdoor Magazine. You can hear the Outdoor Magazine show. Springtime allergies this year are just terrible. I don't know if it's because we didn't get enough of a winter to really kill things off, but man, they're nasty. Anyway, you can hear the Outdoor Magazine show in Houghton Lake on 98.5 WUPS. You can hear us in Manistee and WMLQ 97.7 FM. And let's jump over to Sandusky in the Thumb. You can hear the show on WMIC 660 AM 95.3 FM. This segment of Outdoor Magazine is brought to you by Killer Food Plots, Michigan-based family-owned Killer Food Plots. It's getting to be that time, isn't it? May is traditionally thought of as the food plot planting season. Well, this week coming up is May. Rich Krazan of Killer Food Plots can help you out. Go to his website, killerfoodplots.com, killerfoodplots.com, to learn about the services they have available, the seed blends they have available, the importance of soil testing. What you do now can affect or impact your hunting success this fall. So it's a good time to be doing that. It's just a good time to be out in the woods right now, too, as well. So killerfoodplots.com, killerfoodplots.com. When you're online, check out my website, MikeAveryOutdoors.com. And also, please go over to this website, richardpsmith.com. That is, of course, the website of outdoor writer and hunting expert Richard P. Smith. Richard, before the break, you were talking about the impact of bear predation on whitetail fawns in the springtime. I guess if you listen to just talk, you would think that wolves are the only thing out there killing fawns. But there's a lot of things out there eating those things, isn't there?
Exactly. And black bears are one of the most important ones. There's research done in Michigan has shown coyotes are the number one predator on fawns, and black bears aren't far behind them. However, similar research done in Wisconsin and Pennsylvania found black bears to be the most important predator on fawns in those studies. They take a major toll. Now, there's been some research. John Azoga, who was a former deer researcher for the DNR, he was one of the first people to confirm the impact black bears have on fawn survival. He was doing deer studies in a square-mile enclosure at the Kusno Research Station at Shingleton. And one young bear got in that enclosure over 3 years. One bear each of those 3 years got in the enclosure. That increased fawn mortality with single bears by 22% each of those 3 years. And John figures one of those young bears killed as many as 9 fawns during the weeks it was in the enclosure. And Terry DeBryan did some bear research in Algier County in the UP where he could walk with a couple of adult female black bears and observe what they did. He saw one adult female killed as many as 6 fawns during the time he was with her, and he wasn't with her all the time, so certainly she killed more than those 6. If you add up the potential fawn predation by the more than 10,000 bears that are at least a year old in the UP, and there may be 11,000, you're looking at 40 to 50,000 fawns per year that black bears kill. That's significant.
Well, that's a very big number. I'm thinking that the window of opportunity for a bear to take a fawn is kind of finite, though, right? It's going to be during that time before they can get up and run away, or no?
Right. Yes. During the first 2 weeks of their life, fawns rely on hiding to avoid capture by predators. But after that time, they're more mobile and better able to escape predators. However, bears and wolves and coyotes do kill fawns that are older than 2 weeks old. In fact, I observed a bear, an adult female bear, kill a fawn that was more than 30 days old. And this is how they kill older fawns. I was walking with Terry DeBryan during his research in Algier County. This adult female had 3 cubs. She was walking through a swampy area, stepped up on a log with her front feet, and there was a fawn bedded on the opposite side of that fallen tree. She pounced on it and killed it. She caught it totally by surprise. It didn't have a chance to get up and run to escape. So bears do kill fawns that are older than 2 weeks, but most of them are in that first 2-week period. But the important thing to keep in mind is peak fawn drop during late May and early June corresponds with the black bear breeding season. Adult males are out there covering mile after mile looking for receptive females. It increases their potential to stumble on fawns that they can catch and kill and eat.
What an interesting story, though, a fascinating thing that must have been to watch in person, that sow take that fawn.
It was exciting. In fact, it was the first fawn that Terry DeBryan saw one of the bears he was following kill, and I happened to be with him at the time. Yeah, it was neat. And to actually see it,
yeah,
how it happened.
Wow. I know that you have extensive experience walking with bears. I didn't know there was anybody else out there doing that, Richard.
Yeah. In Minnesota, Dr. Lynn Rogers in Minnesota, pioneered habituating bears so they would get used to researchers so you could walk with them and observe what they do and what they eat. And Terry patterned his study in Alger County after Lynn Rogers' work.
But if you habituate them then to get used to you, does that somehow affect their patterns and behavior?
No, it doesn't. They get used to the one individual that they're habituated to, such as a researcher. And they know the difference between that person and other people. In fact, when Terry DeBryan was out of town, I used the telemetry equipment to try and monitor this adult female, and she wouldn't let me get close enough to see her. She knew Terry's voice and Terry's scent and knew the difference between me and Terry. And any other individual they would encounter, they would not let them see him. They know the difference.
That's interesting. As long as we're talking about whitetails, how did this mild winter affect our UP whitetail population?
Very positively. It was a record mild winter. There was never enough snow in most of the UP to hamper deer movement, so they could move around wherever they want, get food, and there was no nutritional stress associated with this past winter like normal winters. And the deer came through in excellent shape. We had a good acorn crop last year, which helped. And in fact, I was monitoring 6 bucks during the winter, and one of them held his antlers until April, which is the latest I've seen a buck with antlers in the UP.
Yeah, that is late. And it was because of the lack of stress on the animal?
Yeah, exactly. The weather was mild, and we didn't get much snow. It was easy, very easy on the deer. The antler shedding is connected to reduced testosterone levels in bucks and their nutrition levels. Those that are in the best health and have the best food hold their antlers the longest.
Richard, I know you've been following the DMI, the Deer Management Initiative. Do you have a feel for what's going on inside of those? Have you talked to anybody? Do you know what's going on?
I've seen some Facebook posts. From what I've seen, I'm not very optimistic about anything positive coming out of those groups. One of the biggest things I would have wanted to see and supported in the Lower Peninsula is a lift on of the ban on baiting in the Lower Peninsula, and I don't see that happening. It may come out of it, but I'm not getting the feeling that's going to happen. I recently looked at the prevalence levels of TB in the Northeast Lower Peninsula over a period of years, and the DNR claims that baiting helps spread that disease. So with that in mind, if you eliminate baiting, which the ban on baiting went into effect in 2019 in the Lower Peninsula. If baiting were spreading TB among deer, eliminating that practice should reduce the prevalence rate of TB in the Lower Peninsula, but that has not happened. It's still at 1.7%, which is very close to the 2.1% prevalence rate in 2019 when the baiting ban went into effect. That's clear evidence that a ban on baiting is not reducing the spread of TB, and I'm sure I'm very positive based on my many years of walking with whitetails and seeing their social interactions. The ban on baiting is not reducing the spread of chronic wasting disease in the Lower Peninsula either.
I didn't know our conversation was going to go this direction, but I'm glad it did because I'd like to talk more about this. Now, we're going to run out of time, but can you hang around for another segment when I have to cut you off here in just a few minutes?
Sure.
Okay, I appreciate that. Bringing up baiting, to me that's very interesting. Personally, I would like to see the bait ban lifted in the Lower Peninsula, if for no other reason than the DNR says we need to kill more deer. If you want the average hunter to have the ability to harvest more deer, bait to me is a very effective tool. If you don't want to bait, then don't bait. But I've seen it firsthand. I know it can attract deer to a property and increase your odds of success. So if hunter numbers are down, but we need to increase the harvest, then let people bait.
Exactly. In fact, baiting with 1 gallon of bait was legalized in Deer Management Unit 452 1 year, and results of that 1 year of legal baiting with 1 gallon of bait proved that those who hunted over bait, both bow hunters and gun hunters, had higher success rates.
Hang tight, Richard. I'm going to cut you off there, but we will continue after the break. We're talking with Richard P. Smith. The website, richardpsmith.com, richardpsmith.com. We will pick up his thoughts on baiting. I find this to be a very, very interesting topic. I made a post the other day, said that I'd like to see baiting come back, and somebody said, well, of course you would, Avery. That's the only way you can kill anything. Well, there we go. Hunters against hunters, eh? Anyway, we'll talk about this and more coming up after the break right here on Outdoor Magazine. You can hear the Outdoor Magazine show on more than 30 stations across the great state of Michigan, including News 97, 98, 98.7 WLDN. In Ludington, just down the coastline, WKBZ in Muskegon, 1090 AM. Let's jump over to the other side of the state. In Saginaw, WSGW 790 AM, 100.5 FM. I'm in the studios of WSGW right now, here with Jonathan Dent. John doing the award-winning radio broadcaster. John Dent doing a great job as always. This segment of Outdoor Magazine brought to you by Reader Landscaping. Reader can take care of your lawn and property because it's your nature and our nurture. Let them create an outdoor getaway in your backyard. I got big plans for the Reader Cruise this summer. They know about it. We've been talking. I just think they do a great job, and they can come into your place and really make it look special. I don't care if it's a vacation home up north or if it's a lakefront property or if it's your primary residence. Reader has experience in all of these things, both in maintenance. In fact, they're going to be, well, by the time you hear this show, they will have been at my house to open the sprinkler systems back up, do some maintenance work, do some landscaping. They do it all. The website, readerlandscaping.com. That's readerlandscaping.com. Talking right now with Richard P. Smith, his website, richardpsmith.com. Richard, before the break, we swerved into the area of baiting. Let's talk about this concept in general. There is a perception among some people in the general public and even some hunters that the use of bait to harvest an animal is in some way unethical. Your thoughts on that?
it isn't unethical at all. It's just like hunting any other food source, such as acorns, feral apple trees, beech nuts, cornfields. Deer have excellent senses of smell, hearing, and they're good at detecting hunters regardless of what type of food source people are hunting over. Those who make those claims as unethical haven't tried it to see how difficult it can be. It can be easy to take deer over bait sometimes, just like it can be easy to take a buck over a scrape sometimes. But most often, it isn't easy. I mentioned that an experiment for 1 year was conducted in the northeast lower peninsula with 1 gallon of bait. Bow hunters who used bait had 41% success compared to 13% success for hunters who didn't use bait.
Wow.
For gun hunters, firearms hunters who used bait had 51% success compared to 39% success for those who didn't use bait. The only thing baiting accomplishes, a ban on baiting for deer, it produces a false sense that something is being done to control the spread of disease. Notice I said false sense. It doesn't control the spread of disease. The social interaction between whitetails is so abundant, so prevalent, that they spread the disease among themselves without whether or not bait is present. Bottom line. And increasing the harvest with the use of bait reduces the spread of disease by reducing the deer density. Allowing the deer density to increase with a lower harvest with a ban on baiting increases the spread of disease. And it's ironic that the DNR and Natural Resources Commission approved a ban on baiting in the Lower Peninsula. At the same time, they approved a 3-year experiment on mandatory antler point restrictions in the CWD management zone in southern Michigan, which increased the spread of the disease, that mandatory antler point restriction, because a percentage of the yearling bucks in that area had CWD, and those mandatory antler point restrictions protected diseased yearling bucks from hunters. It spread the disease.
You could take the bait question to other species, though, like for bear hunting in Michigan. If you weren't allowed to hunt over bait, the only thing you would have was spot and stalk and hounds, and you wouldn't get the harvest you need. Hunters would not take the number of bears that have to be harvested.
Exactly. And in fact, baiting is essential for hunters to be able to identify protected versus legal animals. We have regulations that protect sows and cubs, sows with cubs, and bringing bears to a bait in the open where they can observe and see clearly, and it also increases the chances for clean kills. That's another reason why deer hunting over bait is a positive, because it increases the chances of inhumane kills on deer and bear.
Richard, I always enjoy our conversations. I appreciate your time.
Yeah, if you can mention that I've got a new third edition.
Oh, yes, please do. Yeah, please do that. Go ahead and tell us that right now. Yes.
It's ready to go to print. It'll be available in a month or two. It's going to be on my website. If people want to order pre-publication copies, we'll send them a copy as soon as it's printed in a month or two.
No, I had forgotten about that. Thank you for the reminder. And that's an addition to the a new edition of the Black Bear book, right?
Understanding Michigan Black Bear.
Understanding Michigan Black Bear.
One is Black Bear Hunting, and this is Understanding Michigan Black Bear. For anyone who spends time in bear country, who wants to know how to avoid problems with bears and avoid attack, it's covered in the book.
Perfect. I appreciate that reminder. Thank you, Richard. Richard P. Smith, richardpsmith.com. You can learn more about that book and all of his books on his website, richardpsmith.com. We'll take a break. When we come back, well, you know what we're going to do. We're going to wrap it all up with wild game chef extraordinaire Dixie Dave Minar coming up after the break right here on Outdoor Magazine. Welcome back to Outdoor Magazine. You know we like to wrap up each week's show with wild game chef extraordinaire Dixie Dave Minar, and he's here once again. David, welcome back. How are you?
Really good, Mike. Congratulations on your bird.
Thank you. It was a nice hunt. I got a nice little surprise for you here, though, okay? I got an email I want to read to you. It is from a lady whose name is Denise Baranowski. She says, hi, Mike. Although I'm not directly involved in hunting or fishing, I have an appreciation for the hunting and fishing enthusiasts of our state. I enjoy listening to your show every Saturday morning on our local Port Huron station, WPHM 1380 AM. Here's the good part for you. I think your show is very educational regarding outdoor conservation efforts and wildlife management. I also enjoy the stories shared by avid outdoorsmen, but my favorite part of the show is close to the end when we hear Chef Dixie Dave Minar share his wild game recipes. A friend of mine gave me some venison. I tried it, and it actually turned out amazing. Luckily, I have more venison, so I can make it again. I want to say a big thank you to both you and Dixie Dave. Isn't that nice?
It is. That's really makes my day.
That's Denise Baranowski. So, Denise, thank you for your comments, and thank you for listening on WPHM.
And thank you from me.
And, yes, thank you from both Dave and I. That's very nice. So, David, what do you got for us this week?
Well, we got a wild turkey steak with strawberries and cream.
Ooh. You want to hear the really interesting part?
What?
I have video of this recipe. I have video on the YouTube channel. Dixie Dave cooks wild turkey with strawberries. Wow. So here's what I'm going to do.
And go and see what it looks like.
Yeah. Here's what we're going to do. You're going to obviously give us the recipe now. I'm going to post the printed version on my Facebook page, and I will take this video, and I will also post that this weekend so folks can see that version of it too.
How cool.
Very cool.
You.
All right, so walk us through it there, buddy.
Okay, so this would be for 4 portions. You need about 8 ounces of turkey breast per person, and you're going to slice it across the grain, all right? And you need a pint of fresh strawberries or frozen, a couple of cups of mushrooms diced up, so it's going to not really sliced. You want to dice them kind of large. A couple of cups either of chicken or turkey stock, or if you wanted to, you could just use gravy. 2 to 3 ounces of fresh heavy cream, 2 ounces of strawberry schnapps, about a third of a cup of diced onions. You don't want to overpower this dish with onions. And if you're going to use stock, you want some cornstarch thickened up or melted down to thicken it with, and a couple tablespoons of fresh parsley chopped up fine. So you're going to slice the turkey breast about an inch and a half thick, and you're going to pound it between some heavy-duty saran wrap, like a bread bag or something. You want to break up the fibers because the turkey breast is going to pull up and pucker if you don't do that. You're going to dredge the steaks in flour and saute it a couple of minutes on each side, kind of caramelize that meat, and then remove the steaks from the pan, saute the onions, and simmer it for a minute with that schnapps. And schnapps usually doesn't explode too much. You could add either the gravy or the stock, boil it down to about 1/4 volume if you're using the stock, and if not, use gravy, and then you're just going to reduce that down a little bit. And you're going to add the cream, the berries, and the mushrooms, and the onions, and then you're going to cook that down, heat it up real nice. And if you like, if it's an older bird, what I would do is put it in a casserole and pour this mixture over it and bake it for 45 minutes to an hour. Slow. Don't overcook the turkey too much. You can't really overcook it to where it's going to fall apart. And you can top this with parsley and serve it with wild rice, asparagus, or fiddlehead ferns. It's a great dish, as you well know.
As I well know. Here is audio from the video.
You can have as many or as little as you like. It's going to lend a real nice earthy flavor to this.
That is so cool that I found that.
Wow. Were you looking at told your guy there?
Well, what I've got is on my YouTube channel, I posted some of your old recipes, and I thought if we could find this one this week, that would be perfect. So anyway, I will do that. And I got to ask you before we go, did you get a chance to get out and hunt yet?
Not. I've been working at the house.
Well, I tell you what, as nasty as it was last weekend, you didn't miss much. It felt like a November deer hunt out there opening morning.
Well, hey, did I say it's on page 63?
You didn't, but John told me it was. A little birdie told me that. And I have to apologize because last week, because I got so busy turkey hunting, I actually forgot to post the recipe last week. So I will post the recipe this week and the video to make up for it. All right, David, have a good week. We'll talk to you next time, buddy.
Everybody get out in the woods and have fun.
And have fun. That's the whole goal, is to have fun. Wild game chef extraordinaire Dixie Dave Minar, a big part of the Outdoor Magazine show. But you know what? We couldn't do the show without you. I couldn't do the show without you. If you weren't listening, if you weren't following me on social media, if you weren't watching the different posts, the different live streams. And by the way, I do encourage that. I'm pretty active on Facebook. I put a video on YouTube. I do live streams every week. I'm on Instagram. I even started putting video on TikTok. You won't see me doing a little dance in front of the camera. I promise you that. My name is Mike Avery. This show is called Outdoor Magazine. My website, MikeAveryOutdoors.com. My email address is mike@MikeAveryOutdoors.com. I appreciate you spending part of your day with me, or your night, whenever you're listening. And I will wish you a good week, and I will talk to you next time right here on Outdoor Magazine.